Grateful that you guys could all join. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon or evening, wherever you're dialing in from. I'm Matt Amundson, and I'm joined by two surprise guests. So unfortunately, Maria Pergolino was not able to make today's webinar. So I called in an assist from two of my favorite marketers and two people that I get to work with on a day-to-day basis. And so I'm just so thrilled to be joined today by both Sydney Sloan and Peiris. So we're going to go through a slightly different webinar today. We thought it might be interesting for folks who are joining us today to hear kind of three separate takes on five big topics that are going on in marketing. So we're going to go through that. Each one of us has got our own kind of take on how to manage your way through all that's going on right now and what are the best courses of action to take. So if you're unfamiliar with Scale or the Scale platform team, I just want to familiarize you guys with that a little bit. So we help our portfolio companies build and optimize hyper growth go-to-market machines. The three of us on the call today represent the marketing practice here at Scale for the GTM platform. We also have a sales practice and thinking about building some expanded capabilities in other parts of go-to-market as well. What we do here is we leverage experts like the three of us, experts like the two guests I'm joined with, and whatever you would call me, for three real sort of pillars of what we do, which is advisory for our portfolio companies. We also do quite a bit of content creation in the form of services like how to build a great demand gen plan, how to build a marketing plan for a year, how to budget appropriately, how to build great board slides, etc. And we also do educational and networking events. So I always think of the webinar series as a little bit of a combination between the second and third pillar of what we do. In addition to the executives in residence, we also have an expanded network of advisors that can be leveraged for some of the advisory work that we do. And those people are our operators who are currently working in the field, and the brands below are representative of where those folks have built their careers or where they may currently reside today. So today's speakers, as I mentioned before, are two of my absolute favorite marketers. And I'm not just saying that because they're my coworkers, but because they have some of the greatest resumes that I've ever seen in the B2B marketing landscape. So Sydney Sloan and Peiris. Sydney, would you mind introducing yourself briefly?
Sure. So good morning, everybody. My brief introduction, I was most recently the CMO of SalesLoft for about 4 years as the SDR revolution and then sales tech movement happened. So that was a fun ride. And being a marketer in that space, really talking about how sales and marketing come together to execute effectively, it was educational and inspiring. Prior to that, I was the CMO of a company called Alfresco. And then I had a long career as product marketer in the Adobe land. So that's how I grew up.
And Minnie, you've got the Beyonce space on this slide.
Nice. Okay. And look, we're, you can tell that we work together so much because we're all in black this morning and we didn't even talk about it. Anyways, so Peiris, most recently, I just joined Scale as an executive in residence. Most recently was CMO at Doma, which is in the prop tech space, and got to have a super fun ride where I renamed the company, rebranded, and we went public through a SPAC in the span of 6 months when I first got there. So that was crazy growth to start with. I guess my claim to fame probably is going back to my couple gigs before that, which was NetSuite. Did the ride from sort of 5 million all the way up to almost $1 billion. Started running product management, then product marketing, and then eventually took on all of marketing there. In between, did a few startups, so definitely been in the shoes of a Series B as well as a Series sort of C, D-ish in different industries, so supply chain and digital health. So I've seen a lot of areas where you have to work for creating demand, very when no one's looking for a solution amongst those startups did. So that's been a good learning as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for sort of heeding the bat symbol when I put it out into the sky and joining me on such short notice for this. So I'm really excited. I was mentioning earlier to some of the folks that joined right away that this is a webinar that I've always wanted to do since I joined, the Scale platform team, given the fact that, I get this wonderful opportunity to work with such incredible people. So much of the time, when I'm out in an operating role, all I get to do is kind of admire these folks work from afar. So it's nice to be able to work together on a project like this, and hopefully everybody benefits from it. I will say, we plan to go through 5 different topics and each give our take on it. But given the fact that there's so many great marketers who have dialed into this, please feel free to use the chat if you have your own thoughts. We're just 3 people, but with everybody on this webinar, we're certainly a lot stronger. And the hope here is that everybody has an opportunity to learn something and also to share their experience. So please feel free to hit that chat anytime. So let's dive right in, if I can figure out how to use Zoom. So first topic is, what is a marketing tactic that you're seeing work right now? We know, obviously, and there's been so much talk lately that, kind of the old marketing playbooks are not as effective as they used to be. So, we get a great opportunity, not only, in our work here at Scale, but with our expanded networks of peers to see some of the stuff that is really working. So we're going to give you our opinions on that. So let's kick it off with Sydney.
The thing that I'm very happy to say that we see working right now is the return of in-person events, first of all. And at the beginning, it was like small events, small networking events. But no, if you were in the security space and went to RSA, that was full on. And the city was vibing in San Francisco. And so I wouldn't hold back on thinking of large scale events if you have enough of a community to bring together in such a way in an ecosystem. I've also been to SaaStr the last couple of years, and I think they've done a fantastic job of really figuring out how to run these large scale events. One thing in that in-person event idea too is I think trying to create an opportunity for large teams to come and attend together. So we used to do this where you'd like do a 5-pack or a 10-pack. Well, now that so many companies are distributed and remote, really think about how do you encourage and provide an environment where you can bring more people from a company and let them reconnect and use the time, as well as also coming to your event. So, really think about how that you could work that. We're going to talk a little bit in the next question, but I had to throw in also, PPC and SEO for competitive campaigns is really big. PPC and SEO around events. If you're attending an event, we give that advice a lot of times to our portfolio companies that don't think about that. So when you're going to these large scale events, and Maria was actually the person that I learned this from back in her days at Aptus, she wrote a blog on how to get the most out of Dreamforce, which was the highest performing piece of content when you'd search for Dreamforce, any question about Dreamforce. So if you can optimize your content and your PPC and SEO around one of these large scale events, if you're one of the exhibitors, I think that's a really effective marketing tactic as well.
Couldn't agree more. And the last conference I was at was Money 2020 last year, and it was buzzing. Tons of people. And I think that there's been a little bit of a buildup of people wanting to be at events, and obviously, due to COVID not being able to go. So people are there and they're active. And one of the things that I experienced, and I'll let some other folks chime in here as well, is, people really wanted to talk. The sort of eyes glued to the carpet, walking past your booth that we were seeing pre-COVID had sort of changed. People were up, their eyes were open, they were looking at what was new. So I agree, man. I think in-person events, large conferences, if done correctly, are great.
And you've always been able to do is at a zero-sum budget item, Matt, but I think it was hard because we cut that budget during COVID. And then we've been asked to cut more budget. So really convincing your organization that making this investment is worthwhile
Yeah.
getting as much as you can out of your partners to offset the costs. But that means there's fewer events, so more people will want to come to yours if you're able to pull it off. Sorry, Minnie, I heard you.
Yeah. I'll piggyback on the big events thing. I think the way to make, way to justify the budget and to make it successful is you gotta have sales partnership going into it so that there's appointment setting that happens. You can't really count on someone walking by the booth anymore. Like, you have to do the work ahead of time.
Sure.
So get those conference lists. If you don't have full names, then there's lots of tools. One of Matt's old, going to his history, like Zoom Info, can let you fill in a lot of the information these days. Do the pre-event outreach. And was just, we were talking to one of the portfolio companies the other day who said they had set 30 meetings like going into a trade show, which is phenomenal, right? So those are these enterprise sales. So 30 is a good number if you're in SMB land and thinking like that's really low. So leverage, close partnership with the sales team going into an event can be huge, particularly the big ones.
Yeah.
And then I'll kind of continue that, like, just think about, so the broader thing that seems to be working to here is community. And I don't want you to think about community just in the digital sense of an online community, but bringing community together with your field events, coupled with your thought leadership, right? So that's when you can see some really, basically like get an anchor speaker that everyone's going to want to come here, and then create, particularly if you're trying to go into C-suite. This is a great tactic that, I've certainly used in the past and a lot of folks are using today too, is create like a smaller dinner event, but with the speaker and with some sort of content that you can use as a draw card.
Minnie, we were talking about this the other day. Sorry, Matt. What's the timing? So just to set expectations, like when do you need that? Depending on the size of the event, when do you need the speaker locked in and how much runway do you think?
Oh yeah, you need to get the speaker locked in at least like 8 weeks ahead so that like you have a full 6 weeks to then drive attendees, because you want to be able to name drop. And this is like, so when I was at that supply chain startup that I was mentioning, we did this all the time. We'd have these dinner series throughout, that was a field event really, but get a sort of a luminary in supply chain and then you nag people with, as soon as you get a new RSVP, it's like, oh, so-and-so's coming. They mentioned that you haven't caught up with them in a while, because everybody knows each other in these circles, right? So you start that drip, at least like lock speaker in 8 weeks ahead, start invite 6 weeks ahead, and then do a steady drip, like leading up to that event with additions of, because you want to create a sense of FOMO. If you don't come to this thing, you're going to be so behind the curve on what's happening in the space.
Yeah. I love that. And switching from full events into more tactical digital, I am really seeing people be very successful with having two distinct motions for demand creation and demand capture. So building an audience, not just trying to convert it through PPC. And I think, early on here, I think Sydney said it best when she was saying, you don't want to just have to pay for every single one of these conversions. You don't have to pay for demand. You need a strong top of funnel motion where you can start to, bring people together and get them engaged with your content before you necessarily ask them to see a demo. So, top of funnel content, I think is brilliant. And I think there's a couple of companies that are executing it very well right now. Obviously, everybody sort of leans into what they think of, Gong doing, but historically brands like SalesLoft have done this really well, where, they're creating that demand at the top through community in places like LinkedIn, but also in physical spaces. And then those leads are so much easier to convert because they have a familiarity with your brand. Obviously, we're all not SAP and Oracle. So how do we get people to know who we are, understand our content, understand our point of view and perspective on our category, and then once they feel comfortable, convert? To me, that has been really lost over the course of the last 10 years. So many people are focused on just demand generation. And when they say that, what they're really talking about is demand capture. How do we put forms in front of everything? How do we get somebody, fast track to be speaking to a salesperson right away? And they've been skipping that harder portion at the top, which is let's really cultivate a community of people and not maybe necessarily think of them as hey, if you want to see a white paper, we need to capture everything and an SDR is going to reach out to you. But just giving people the freedom to learn on their own. And then once they're engaged, having a different tactic that brings them into the mid funnel where they'd actually feel comfortable speaking to a salesperson. Awesome. Anybody else have any thoughts? I know there's a little bit of back and forth on the chat. So Peter chimed in. LinkedIn is working really well as a thought leadership channel for us. They added 1,400 subscribers in the last 9 weeks. That's brilliant. I love that. And I'll take it a step further just because I think about digital ads a whole lot. Obviously, LinkedIn advertising is great for pinpointing down into, hey, here's our ICP, here's the personas that matter. You can really get very narrow with your ads. What I have not seen work very effectively is trying to run ads that get people to convert and speak to a salesperson there. But putting your thought leadership, your point of view, your perspective, an awesome webinar that you did, a great podcast that you did, the highlights of that content right there front and center on that ad tend to convert really, really well. And again, that's your way of bringing these people into the top of funnel before you're asking them to make a commitment and actually speak to a salesperson. Love that, Peter. Congratulations on that. Those are great metrics. All right, we jump into topic number 2. This is one that I'm sure many of you guys are dealing with. This is something that we deal with frequently as we're chatting to folks in our peer networks. What's the one piece of advice you would give to a marketing leader who is dealing with a smaller team and a flat or even potentially smaller budget? We're going to start again with Sydney. And Sydney, I think you may have smuggled more than one, but I think the audience will appreciate all your thoughts here.
Okay. Well, my first advice, and if anybody knows me, I say this all the time. I'm such a big believer in really working hard on your segmentation and getting your ICP as tight as possible. And I think that we were working with a company the other week, and they're like, we need 1,500 accounts, and it's like, no, you don't. Like let's keep working through the ICP. They had like a high, medium, and low factor on one of the criteria, and it's like, well, let's just take the highs. Let's work the highs and really get the flywheel going with the demand gen efforts aligned with the sales teams on our most highly qualified opportunities or highest set of accounts. To start, and then we can work into the lower end of that. But why not set ourselves up for success at the very beginning by really working hard to identify, who do we think the most important customers are? And I think the other thing at this point in time, which we've been advising our portfolio on, is now might not be the time to make 3 or 4 new bets. Look at what your current market penetration is in your core ICP that's grown you to this state. Are you still growing at a healthy rate, 25, 30% within that ICP? How much market share do you believe is still out there? And double down on that before going out and trying to investigate too many net new routes to market. Maybe do a +1. And once that gets to metrics that make you comfortable that you've got that product market fit and go to market alignment, then start another one. These are not the years or the economic conditions to be like, we're going to go after 3 new verticals next year. Like, no, just pick one and the one that you believe is the best fit for your company, and make sure that you're investing to win. One person in Canada is not a strategy for expanding into a new territory. I see that too often. Like, what do you really need across the go-to-market team with sales, product, and marketing to be able to capture that greatest share of market when you choose to enter that new one?
Yeah, I love this. I mean, to me, it's all about picking that right fit for your organization, going deep there. And I always think about this. There's times in the business where you feel comfortable going a mile wide and a foot deep. This is the right time to be, a foot wide and a mile deep. Just really focusing all your effort, your investments into the places where you can win.
Yep. And you did say I had a twofer because I had two ideas and just not one here. So the other idea, if your budgets are flat or your team is being cut, is to really think about the partnerships that you're putting in place to be able to give yourself capacity that can be dialed up and dialed down. So that's agency partners you trust who will be with you through the thick and thin. It could be a consultant. There's lots of really talented marketing people out there right now that are choosing to be fractionals or consultants as we kind of navigate this kind of strange environment that we're in. And we know a lot of them if you're looking for one to put you in touch with. So I think that's another way too, to give yourself capacity as a leader, where you're working with highly constrained resources within your team.
Yeah. And then like a hack that I use at times like this is I'll lean into my vendors, right? And I'll be like, hey, I need more help. And they don't want to lose you as a customer. So generally speaking, they're really willing to bend over backwards to do all it takes to keep you as on board with them. So, if ever there was a time where you were like, hey, I need you customer success person to help me out with this, that, or the other. I need you account manager to help me out with this, that, or the other. Now's the time to leverage that.
Yeah, good tip. Yeah, I don't have much more to add to what you two already touched on. I think given Sydney and I both come from product marketing backgrounds, I think we're very aligned on like, look at your customer base and figure out where there's a strong set of reference customers. And so I think that's an important lesson too, like just because you have numbers in a particular segment, are they all happy, right? You may not truly have product market fit. So you might get a false read there. So really look at who are those customers who are willing to sort of be passionate and go to bat for you, and then double down on that segment and don't try to boil the ocean. Like definitely right now is the time to go deep on one or two that you have great product market fit in and can show real value, because today, you have to think about it from your buyers are also in the same environment that you're in, right? So they're all being squeezed for budget too. So you better have a pretty good case to make for ROI return there. Yeah.
I mean, I think most people would tell you at this point, generally anything that they're buying is requiring CFO approval. That's certainly what we're hearing from most of the sellers that we all know is, it's going straight up to the CFO. So better have a pretty darn good case for bringing something new in. And I think you have to operate knowing that that's the way the market is functioning right now. We just had okay, cool.
That was me. Yeah.
That was,
I mean, like, I think too, Matt, I would love to hear your point of view on like, SEO or so PPC tends to be your advertising tends to be one of the largest spends because it's trackable.
Yeah.
And so if they can continue to prove that investment is paying the bills for instance, like how would you even think about managing the PPC budget in a more effective way?
Well, I mean, that sort of dovetails right into what my point was here, which is, I would advise people to optimize for SEO right now, as opposed to spending a lot of money on PPC. PPC we know is expensive, but works really well, although it's not working super great right now because there's not a lot of active buyers just hitting ads and converting. Whereas SEO is very inexpensive and pays for itself long-term. And I know just because I've been in this position before where, I'm getting great results out of PPC, I start to focus a little bit less on optimizing my website for search. But right now is a good time to do that because it doesn't cost a lot. It requires a lot of time and attention, but I think it's great. And then I did smuggle a little thing in here too, which is the concept of zero-click content. Which is another way of creating sort of advertising into channels like LinkedIn or Facebook, if that's the right channel for you. Oftentimes we think about the content that we need to post there as needing to be substantial, meaning you got to click from a place to another place, and there's got to be this nice big meaty article with all kinds of form fields that people need to fill out in order to access it. They generally don't like to because they know they're going to get a call from an SDR or an account executive. But zero-click content is, just really cutely designed content with like a single idea that you can just pump out into LinkedIn. And as people are scrolling through, they're going to see it and they're going to absorb it and they're going to start to associate that value with your brand. And so it's a very inexpensive way, again, to start putting the word out. And I know I referenced Gong earlier, but to me, they're really the masters of this. Also, another brand, if you guys aren't familiar with, does a very good job of this, is a company called Fivetran, which is they'll just put a single idea into like a box and they'll just post it right onto their LinkedIn. There's no clickable link. There's no like more information. It's just an idea. And that's a great way to just get your message in front of people for just the cost of the design work, which should be fairly minimal. So, you know, to answer your question, Sydney, like I would advise most people to start thinking about how do we reduce our spend on PPC right now? And what are the ways that we can start to grow our audience organically through things like SEO? And I don't want to step on your next point, but there are some incredible tools that are out there that can help facilitate this for you so that the task becomes a little bit less daunting. So I won't step on that.
I'm going to piggyback on your point there with two examples, Matt. And I would say, so on the PPC front, like think about humor for delivering your message, right? So I did this at Supply Chain Startup, which supply chain is very boring, if you can imagine sometimes. No offense to those folks in the industry out there, but we use the panel format in LinkedIn, like to create these little comic strips. And they worked. And like supply chain professionals like to make fun of themselves for some reason. They're somewhat self-deprecating that way. So know your audience and figure out, like, is there some different tactic you can take to insert some levity into their lives? Because Lord knows we could all use a laugh every day, right? So that works really well. And then I think on the SEO front, going back to my NetSuite days, we got our, we were short of, we couldn't quite beat Wikipedia, but if you Googled for sort of cloud ERP, we owned that second spot. And we did it with just definition pages. So if you're in an industry that has a lot of jargon, for instance, this is a great, because anyone like wanting to learn about the space or wanting to increase their own education of the space, they're going to search for those terms that are, industry standard terms. So having a strong SEO strategy around what are those industry terms you can uniquely kind of own and build around can be another good lever.
I agree. And my biggest hack there is like, just build a glossary. It works really well.
Yes.
Don't only build a glossary and like think that's the silver bullet, but it's a very simple and effective way of adding those terms to your website. And I know Sydney did something awesome at SalesLoft. Maybe bring up that example, Sid.
Yeah, well, I stole it from HubSpot. I can't claim that I came up with it. But on your landing page, you put your highest performing keywords at the bottom of the page. We even went as far, and HubSpot did this too, to create tools, like free tools, like Email Grader or subject line creator, which aligned with delivering. They search for that, they'd hit our page, and they could fulfill it for free. Which they would keep on coming back. So those pages got really well indexed because, they use it, some people would use it 10 times a day. And those are really great performing strategies for us.
Nice. Awesome. Well,
if somebody hasn't used HubSpot's website grader, you're missing out. So that's where I got the idea.
So what emerging go-to-market trend has the most staying power right now?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see the chat light up to learn about what folks are doing in using AI in your strategies. As I think about re-entering the workforce. It excites me as a marketing leader to think, how do I change my organizational design and structure and the way that our marketing team functions with all these new innovations in AI? And it's like, there's one a day. I'm not kidding. Like it's just absolutely mind-boggling, but it is going to change the world. Like Minnie and I are doing a webinar next month that is like, hold on, let's make up a title. And then we had ChatGPT write our descriptor, and then we gave it the descriptor and had it rewrite the title. Like it took us 5 minutes. And it's just, why not do that? So I do think
productivity boost.
Yeah, I do think that and Reggie, which is a Scale Ventures company, like I work with them a lot, like they write great, like that. It writes great sales emails. It introduces personalization, and they're innovating every day on the things that they're doing. And so it's just, there won't be the haves and have-nots. Everybody's going to do it. And it's just how quickly can you figure out what the right way is to use AI? And then make sure that that's still aligned. So in the same way that we saw the chat bots kind of take over, but then all of a sudden I had 5 bots on my website, and guess what? They didn't talk to each other, and it created a really poor experience. So I think you have to think holistically about how do you apply these tools in a way that they're still connected and learning, versus having everybody use their own free tool of choice. So I do think that there's some really good technologies out there like Writer and Jasper, that, you know, think about it more holistically and how you still evolve your brand and tone in the content that you're creating. And then how do you think about reorienting your content teams to still be the curators of ideas and the editors of content, but maybe they're just not putting the 1,000 words down on the page.
Yeah, love it. Love that. I think to your point, there's so much change in that space that it sometimes can feel a little bit daunting to enter into it. But I think to your point, the business process design that you build to use AI is what's really going to matter here. And ensuring that people are all still singing from the same songbook is also important, because the proliferation of these tools means marketing can have one, sales can have one, customer success could have one. I mean, the reality is anybody in the organization can have one, and
I'm afraid of
it, you know. So I think driving consistency, having a single platform where you're able to bring your brand voice into it, so it always feels like it's coming from your brand, is really critical. And that's why I think tools like Reggie are great, because they don't allow people to quote unquote go rogue.
Yeah.
All right, Minnie.
Okay, so definitely 2 trends we're seeing a lot among portcos right now, like product-led growth, and then community, right? So on the product-led growth front, I think it's magical if you can, you know, get self-serve working. However, I will throw a word of caution in here, in that, like, not everybody has a product where that is really can be applied effectively, particularly if it's a tool you're targeting to a large enterprise, or, you know, it's more of a infrastructure play. You have to know whether you have that user touch point that you can use as an in-product conversion. So while it can be amazing in terms of the way that you can get it to work, it's not for everyone. So one thing that you know, you have to kind of analyze your customer base here. Community will always work no matter what. So that if you're not leveraging that today, I think particularly today, like doubling down on your current customers, because don't forget, expansion pipeline around expansion is just as good to hitting revenue and meeting those targets as net new logos. So as marketers, I think we sometimes forget the great gift we have in our install base, right? So look and lean into them and make them feel empowered and make those connections. You know, like we talked about it from an event perspective. Look, we've all been through COVID and everyone's tired of kind of being super virtual. So bringing people together, and if you're the reason that they have, you know, excuse to get together, that's a great thing to do. So I think there's a lot of ways that you can be thinking about community and how you build and foster that, and lean into your champions to tell. I'm always a big fan of letting your customers tell your story. So because guess what, you know, no one's going to buy without talking to their friends.
Yeah.
So the more that you can foster that referral loop for yourselves, is a good thing.
No, I completely agree. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to pile onto that for a second, because I think as you're thinking about structuring your teams, you know, sometimes customer marketing is in one place and field marketing or events in another one. And I've always liked to drive like a strategy of at least 80-20, 80% prospects, 20% customers at all small scale events. And maybe even a higher mix. It's almost the reverse than in your large scale events, where it's like 80% customers, 20% prospects. And I like to talk about the revenue in the room. So when people are saying, well, what's the ROI? A lot of times they're just looking at the ROI on the net new business that is being generated. But I like to also give ROI to your existing customers and count that as an investment in your renewal. So as you're thinking about the performance of your events, That's what I always start with. It's like number of attendees, revenue in the room, and pipeline in the room. And that helps shine light on, why you invest in these, in the large scale events or the community programs, because that's how you're growing and sustaining your revenue. When I ran Community at Jive, which was a community platform, we did a study one time, and there was a direct correlation by the number of community members engaged in the community and the X factor of how much that company spent with you. I mean, it kind of made sense, but if you had if you had 2 community members, maybe they were a $200,000 account, but if you had 10 community members, they were a $5 million account. And so also, drawing that in and driving and monitoring the engagement by account in your community is another metric you could introduce.
Yeah.
And Sydney, great point on community doesn't have to mean just your customers either, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can, if you establish a good thought leadership program, and you get anyone that's you consider the leader into speaking on webinars or panels or podcasts for you, people intrinsically assume they're your customers. So I did this at the digital health startup I mentioned. We were teeny tiny and we were going up against the likes of Siemens. But I had this amazing network of speakers that we would bring into events, and everyone thought we were way bigger. So we were punching way above our weight from a brand perspective because of the other folks that we were sort of leveraging as part of our broader network and who they associated us with. So it's a good tactic if you're trying to get started.
Absolutely. So a couple questions came in through the chat. One from Jeff. In your experience with AI-driven content, can it speak authentically and align with your brand's tone of voice? Where are we on this technology maturity curve? I think the answer is yes, but you have to be using the right type of tools. I've not gone deep enough with ChatGPT in terms of, can I get my tone of voice, or can I tune a brand's tone of voice very well to the content? But I think in platforms like Reggie, you can do that very effectively because it gives you the opportunity to let that system ingest some of your content. So it gets a sense of the way you like to write. Sydney, any thoughts there? Because I know you
Yeah, that's exactly the same thing I've heard with the folks that use Writer. They have it does a really good job of doing the brand tone and voice. And that's my fear, right? I think that companies right now that are starting to implement, allow their people to use these technologies, you have to have guardrails in place. And we've had enough, I think, webinars on, the ethical sides of this as well. But it is about going back and designing the systems, and where do we allow the AI to be used, and how are we supporting our teams in the creation of the content, and all the way through, the salespeople that are wanting to use it. I don't want everybody just throwing an email into ChatGPT and getting that. No, we need to be able to curate this and also have it continue to learn. If you're letting people go rogue, then your systems aren't learning. If they're using the systems and they're learning what's working, what's not, and they're feeding that back into the AI for your company about how to improve the messaging. I mean, that's the secondary promise of this. It's not just about getting great emails or great content out. It's about the constant learning about what's working and what's not that helps you continue to evolve. I do think that there's another thing. And when we were talking with Anthony Canadas as he was launching his Audience Plus platform, we were like, okay, now everybody can create content at a much higher velocity. So there also is this point where in the design of your content strategy is where do you start to stand out? Is it the design and the graphics that you use? Is it multimedia and multimodal strategies? So I don't think it's the end all be all, because everybody can do it and do it quickly. And so I think you do have to think about that. Like when you guys were talking about LinkedIn, one of the things I love seeing on LinkedIn is this medium form video content where people are doing their podcast with video and they're doing the transcription, but you're getting just enough that you can learn from what the video, how many people are really going to go from there and watch the podcast? A fraction of a percent. But right. At the same time, you are building that education and awareness in a medium that is authentic, that cannot be replicated by AI tools. Yeah. And so I think, again, as you're designing that strategy, you have to think about all these different aspects.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Which leads me to my point here, which is the B2Cification of B2B. I mean, we've been heading this way for a long time. And I know that's not a word, that's why I italicized it, but it's the descriptor that I use for what's been coming down the pipe, right? Like PLG or interactive prospect-driven demos. We're starting to see, the proliferation of products like Reprise and Walnut and then we're even starting to see cutting edge stuff that's going a little bit further than what they're doing, and giving a prospect the opportunity to do a self-driven demo without a salesperson. Like, hey, I want to see a demo. Great. Do you want to see it with a salesperson or not? Wow, I can see it with not a salesperson. I'm definitely going to pick that. And we think about the way we consume or make purchases as consumers on Amazon. We're like, let me just see all the stuff. Let me try to experience the best way I possibly can, even though it's a physical object. I'm going to try and experience it through reviews or through different angles of what the product actually looks like. And that's how buyers want to buy as much as they possibly can. So giving people the freedom to be able to consume content the way they want to, review products the way they want to, that is the future. And the closer you can get to that, through subsequent investments you're going to be making over the course of the next several years, the better off you're going to be. All right, let's go to point 4. What is the most common issue you see marketing departments getting wrong, Sydney?
Okay, I keep getting to go first. Sorry.
Yeah.
So this idea that you can do more with less, like, I'm tired of hearing it, and I challenge everybody to think about, let's do less with less. And so how do you make those trade-offs about, what are we going to not do? Like, you're being asked to cut. Guess what? Don't ask your teams to continue to do more. And I know it's really hard going through these times. Believe me, I've had to, rounds of laid off. I've been laid off. It's a hard, not fun thing to do. And so if you're being asked to do that, my advice is partner with your sales and product teams and look for initiatives that you can take off the table. Don't try to just make it, around single individuals, yet you still have the same goals or OKRs. Like, what are the things that we thought we would invest in that we're deciding not to, and removing that from the equation, which it's never easy to be let go. But if you're being let go because the thing you were working on is no longer going to be invested in, that's a much different a story than we had to pick this person over that person. So
yeah,
that's what I would do. I know, tough times, it's not fun.
Yeah, not fun.
Yeah.
Many.
I'll be a little less doom and gloom on my one.
We appreciate it.
All right.
Look, although it does relate to current economic climate we're all living in, you need to have just strong foundationals at this point. So I'm a big believer, demand gen doesn't work if you're targeting the wrong people, you don't have your ICP right, and your messaging is off, which is where product marketing comes in. Same for if your brand voice is completely off, right? So you need to have all sort of 3 pillars, if you will, of marketing working very closely together. So if you don't have that alignment right now amongst the marketing team, then God forbid, you're definitely not going to get aligned with sales. So clean up your house first, take care of your cross-functional teams, make sure that you're all working with the same kind of objectives and mission in mind, starting with, you need to have that strong brand strategy of what am I going to stand for? Because I'm also a big believer in people buy technology and they buy because they believe in your vision and the why, right? So if you haven't watched Simon Sinek, do that. Definitely figure out what the why is of your company in terms of your reason for being, and it has to be a bigger vision, and that's what starts your brand voice, and everything drives from that in the tone you use, and then get aligned on really like we talked about earlier, 1 or 2 segments really that you can have a strong value prop for, and then go run your programs from that base.
I love that because it sets me up perfectly, because once you've done that, gotta go in with your sales organization. This is true even in great economies, right? I think back to the companies that I work for that were super, super successful. there was such a strong alignment between sales and marketing. I mean, maybe from a people perspective, not always, right? Like we're all working hard to make it work, but sales knew that marketing was targeting the right ICPs and the right personas. And there was an integration of messaging between what was happening at the top of the funnel, what was happening in the middle of the funnel, what the SDRs were sending, what was in the sales team's pitch deck, what the customer success team was saying, once a company converted, and what renewal and upsell reps were saying in order to retain and expand the business. So it's natural when a company is not performing well for things to start getting siloed. I'll solve the problem. No, I'll solve the problem. Well, I don't want to solve the problem with you, so I'm going to go solve it on my own. It is super natural for that to happen. We see it in every single application of teamwork, whether it's professional or whether it's in the sports world or whether it's in interpersonal relationships. When things go bad, people tend to have their own take on why they or on how it should be solved, and they will go ahead and take the leap and try to solve it on their own. So staying aligned when times are difficult is really challenging, but it's something that you have to do. And I think when you take some of the advice from earlier in this in this webinar and say, we're going to narrow our focus so there's less places for people to make weird decisions, getting aligned around what those focus points are, not just as a marketing team, not just with the product team, but also with the sales organization, that's critical. And right now I see a lot of people not doing that. And so I would encourage you, especially for people who are working remotely, get together in person, do a workshop together, spend 3 days. Like, you'll find that you'll solve a lot of your communication problems by just getting in the same room together and solving them. So that's my bit of advice for overcoming a challenge like this. All right, we're starting to run out of time. There's a couple chats in. We got our 5th topic. So let's hop right in. And Sydney, yes, again, you are going first.
It's the copy paste. Yeah.
Just trying to recognize a template here. What is the one thing every marketing department should do right now to have that could have the biggest impact on overall go-to-market success?
Yeah, I think it actually flows well from what you and Minnie just said in the previous question. I think if you're not talking to your customer success teams and at leadership about churn, that it is the low-hanging fruit. And I know people are, but how deeply as a marketing team are you going in and really helping to triage, like, what is the customer experience for our existing customers? And at SalesLoft, we had nurture campaigns for our customers that were triggered off product usage. We knew what 3 things would drive the most likelihood of customer retention. If you don't know that, go find it out. For us, it was if they had integrated with another system, if they had run other actions scripts, and a 3rd one was something around the team's activation in certain product areas. And so we had nurtures for each one of those. If customers had not yet done that in a time window, that we'd start sending out to educate them to make sure that they knew how to do it and what it would do if they were to do that, and be that a marketing nurture. We actually ran it out of Marketo, or setting it up in your customer success system for the team. So the customer success person doesn't have to do that. I mean, they've got 50, 100, 200 accounts sometimes they're trying to manage, so they can't coach them. So how do you create marketing programs that helps make that happen? The second thing is, we talk a lot about cross-sell and upsell, and I think it's really hard to expect a customer success person to run cross-sell upsell. Yeah, they can take, if you have more users, they can take that order and process it. But a lot of times they're the farmer, not the hunter. They are there to serve the customer, not ask for more business. And so as you're thinking about cross-sell and upsells with your account management team or your sales teams, or maybe it is your customer success teams, how do you run that as another sales play? And are you running marketing campaigns? So many times people turn off your marketing campaigns when the customer has closed one. No.
Mm-hmm.
You need to acquire new contacts and roles in the accounts that you need to engage with, and keep advertising to them. That's the education part. That's the thank you for being a customer part. That's the, aligning them to new programs and areas of your website, like the knowledge base or university program. Like, keep advertising, keep marketing to your customers, and it's likely a new set of users that you'll be working with. drive them to a community, all those things.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, great. The scale event that we had held recently, we did a whole session on this, like how to expand within your current accounts. Because like I touched on earlier, like pipeline's just as good from your current customers as it is
Closes at a higher rate usually too. Yeah.
bigger conversion, right? Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I'll chime in here on sort of building on something. We talked a lot about sort of generating, top of funnel. I think the biggest lever right now is really like, what does the quality of that look like all the way through the funnel? So this takes very close alignment with sales, and it's from, SDR outreach, if you're handing leads off to them, or if marketing owns the SDR team, then you can like definitely operationalize it even more, all the way to that. What the first discovery call is your make or break. And you have to be much more consultative these days and offer insights, because as a vendor that someone's speaking to, like they're expecting you to know the broader tactics that are working within their industry and be like a consultative industry expert. Matt touched on it, like for marketing people, like you should make your vendors work for you. Well, think about that on the flip side, right? Like your customers expect you as a vendor to work for them. So if you're not giving them like one or two good nuggets that they can walk away with, that they consider valuable, you're probably not getting that second meeting. So definitely good partnership with product marketing and sales comes into play here, but also like demand gen should really care about this, because if you're not getting that conversion, your leads are going to waste and you're being asked to do more with less, like Cindy was talking about her pet peeve, right? So really helping to look at that mid-funnel conversion and how you carry that through is a big leverage, I think, right now.
Yeah, I love this point because it's one that not a lot of people are talking about. Like marketing should play a role here. And
Absolutely.
we, from the perspective that like, we'll create a sales deck, or we'll do, sometimes we own the enablement piece, but like, this is really important. You need to be, as a marketer, you need to be listening to gong calls and hear what's going on there. Are they actually, delivering the deck appropriately? Or did the deck that you created for them and enable them on, is it missing the mark? You get a ton of insights by just hearing how prospects are reacting to the content that's being unfurled. And it's not always a salesperson's fault. Sometimes it's our fault. We create a deck that just doesn't work or it doesn't land. So it's important to really pay attention here and help the sales organization optimize this.
Yeah, actually, I think I'm on a mission now we need to just kill the term first call deck, because if you are not tailoring that to what you heard, like the first call should not have a deck. You should be a conversation where you're trying to elicit as much information as you can, doing that deep discovery. And then you tailor that deck and you deliver a very targeted message to that prospect on the second call.
Yeah. So last point here from little old me, but we talked about this in a few other examples or on a few other topics, is getting closer to customers and then shifting your focus towards being more customer centric. And I know people say this, people say I'm customer centric, people say I'm data driven, but when I'm saying be customer centric is bring your customer stories into everything you do. Bring it into your digital ads, bring it into your SEO. I saw that in the comment section. Have a cab if you don't have a customer advisory board. Have multiple cabs that service verticals and personas and sizes of business. That's okay too. Some of them can be virtual. You don't have to have a Cisco-esque cab meeting every year where you're flying people to Paris and taking them on a private tour of the Louvre. Cisco, I'd be happy to be a customer advisory board member, but you don't have to do that. These are people that you just need to have a great relationship with, that feel the love from you and then help you shape the narrative around your brand, because the story of a brand is so much, it's so much easier for people to understand when they see it through the lens of this is how another company used it. Right. And I think in general, and we touched on this a little bit earlier in terms of like having a customer success person be able to, sort of drive people towards what is the best application of this product. I think products have been built in general to be really flexible. Well, you can do anything with this. That's great, except when you can do anything, you usually don't do anything. You do nothing, right? So I need to be guided to what are the 2 to 3 best ways that I can roll this out. Who are the 2 or 3 best customers that have used this, and how do they use it, and how do they measure it? How do they implement? How long did that take? It's okay to go really deep with your customers, even if you can't say the brand name. If you can just say the category that they occupy, that's fine too, as long as you can be specific in your case studies or specific in those customer stories that you imbrue into everything that you do. Please, for the love of all goodness, like, have your customers in your sales presentations, but a NASCAR slide does not do. Okay. So if you're saying, hey, here's a benefit to our product. Oh, and here's a customer and here's how they used it. Oh, and here's a quote from that person. Just makes the whole experience feel a lot more comfortable to the prospect. It humanizes that company in terms of, oh, it's not just a company. It was Sydney or it was Minnie. Like, I know those people. That's great. Or even if I don't know them, I know that they're a person. I looked at them on LinkedIn. So this type of work is, it has to be intentional. And it feels a little bit like cheating when you do it, because it's, well, of course I would just do that. But a lot of people don't. So if I could recommend anything, is be a lot more customer centric and more customer intentional in your marketing.
I'll add one little nugget to that. Think of your customer story. Like, everyone's so tired of the, like, this company got this value. Like, you need to think about it like a Disney movie, right? Like, there needs to be a protagonist. It's, the poor IT person who was tired of getting paged at 3 a.m. in the morning and having to wake up, not getting enough sleep, missing time with their kids, wanting to go golfing instead, whatever that is, right? Create the protagonist. Then they have to go through, like, the trough of discontent. And then they have to get, the high of success, right? Think about it from that lens, and you'll do much better in making those stories come to life.
I love that.
And animation.
Yes.
I love
And
it.
if there's a funny sidekick, even better.
Awesome. Well, I mean, that leads us to the top of the hour. I want to thank my 2 guests and my wonderful coworkers and people that I have absolutely adored spending so much time with over the course of the last several months. Thank you guys so much for heeding my cry for support and me today. You were absolutely wonderful. If you want to get in touch with any of us, very simple email convention here. You're more than welcome to reach out to us anytime here. We're certainly all available on LinkedIn, and generally I anticipate most of you guys know how that works. So thank you guys all so much for joining us. Wonderful comments, so much back and forth, great tips. Peter, we should have just had you on the show. You were amazing. Thank you so much, Peter Finter. And thank you everybody for joining us. I apologize, Maria wasn't here today, but the show must go on, and boy, did it ever.
It only took 3 of us to, fill her space, but we did it.
We did.
Yeah, we're gonna have to give Maria some grief next time, but it was fun.
Thank you guys. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.